Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're very pleased. We're muted. Okay. Well, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. We're very pleased that you've joined us to outline the 2020 ISAC Legislative Priorities. Today here we have myself, Jamie Cashman, and Lucas Benkin, and also Rachel Bennett with the ISAC team. And first, before we get started with the priorities, we'll talk about a little bit about the legislative priority process. And first of all, that is generated by our Legislative Policy Committee, and this year was chaired by ISAC Vice President Carla Becker, who is the Delaware County Auditor. And then the committee itself is consisted of 32 members, 2 from each of our affiliates. And what that committee does, it develops the legislative objectives for our legislative team to pursue for the upcoming session. And it meets twice a year, first in August to hear from each of the affiliates. I'll just go quickly here to the members of the LPC for this year. And basically what this committee does is develops the policy statements and legislative objectives. And these policy statements express long-term and continuing statements of principal importance for local control and local government authority. This basically gives Lucas and I guidance on pieces of legislation that don't necessarily fall into our legislative package, but affect county government. And then in terms of our legislative objectives, those provide specific problems and solutions for legislators to address. And what we do as a result of those objectives, we seek individual bills to address each of those objectives. And then out of the legislative, for our legislative priorities, typically what we do is we take 3 to 5 out of our legislative objectives, and we move those forward when we have our meetings with legislative leadership prior to the session. And so, like I said before, it meets twice a year. First is in August, and that's usually around our annual meeting. And that LPC meeting consists of the LPC reviewing all of the proposals that come from each of the affiliates. Then in September, the LPC meets for the second time and provides recommendations out of those proposals and moves them forward and sets the priorities to the full ISAC membership. Then in October, and what we've done for the last couple of years is utilize an online voting tool, and that's emailed and sent out to the membership. And then finally, the ISAC board ratifies the legislative objectives and policy statements, and out of those objectives ultimately decides what the top priorities will be. And then next, we're doing what we're doing right now and having a legislative webinar and rollout of the top priorities. And from then, the rest of December and going into early January, Lucas and I and the rest of our folks in leadership will be meeting with legislative leadership and the governor's office to outline what our priorities will be for 2020. And so, outlining for this year, for 2020 will be, again, mental health and disability services, the commercial industrial property tax backfill, water quality and quantity, natural resources, and outdoor recreation, and finally, weight limits on secondary roads. First, getting into mental health and disability services. For those that have followed this issue for several years, this is something that we've continued to address as we've seen the need to further increase for sustainable funding within the counties and the regions. This is something that we need now more than ever. Over the last couple of years, we've had additional services called upon in terms of complex needs for children's services as well. And basically, these have been unfunded mandates that are placed upon the counties and the regions. So that is needed now more than ever. And so we've also seen additional pressure that we've seen as a result of having to deal with Medicaid and the lack of timely payment to our counties and our regions, and the need to support our providers that are out there. We've seen, as a result of the MCOs, some pressure and putting the counties on the hook for several hundreds of thousands of dollars as they wait to be paid, and also the concerns of adequate Medicaid rates that are not sufficient for our providers. So what we're asking for is to renew the partnership that we've had in the state. If they've asked for new services, we're asking to renew that partnership, similar to what they did in years past when they provided the equalization dollars. That worked, but that only lasted for a couple of years. So as they've added these new services, we're asking for the state to provide the needed funding to the counties and the regions to ensure that stability and to address the increased demand for services. If no additional state funding is provided, we're asking for the state to give us the ability to exceed what our current maximum levy and give us the tools to go up to 4728 to fund these new services. What we will see, and what we've run the numbers before, if we're allowed to allow some of the counties within the regions to go up, we'll actually provide a greater balance within the region, and actually a majority of the counties will actually lower their property tax levy that's out there, providing property tax relief for a majority of the counties within the state. And lastly, if none of the above revenues are not advanced, there's talk about going into sales tax for that to provide funding for mental health. And while we certainly support that as a possible option, obviously we do not want to get rid of our current mental health levy because we've seen the state give us money and they've taken it away. And so obviously we still want to have that as an option, but ultimately if that's the kind of a permanent thing that they're looking at, it needs to be constitutionally protected in a distributional formula that's equitable for all counties in Iowa. Next is water quality and water quantity, natural resources, and outdoor recreation. Again, this is something that we have pushed for many years, as we've gone nearly 10 years out from passing the constitutional amendment. This is something that can provide a great benefit and a whole variety of things in terms of outdoor recreation, in terms of water quality and quantity, and also one of the things that it would do would fully fund REAP for the first time ever at $20 million. I know there's going to be a lot of pressure this year in terms of to get this passed and looking at the distribution formula. I think this is something that we realize that's going to be out there this year, but this is something that we still feel strongly that we maintain that formula, and that was the formula that sold the constitutional amendment when it was passed 10 years ago. We need to remind folks that was the basis of which it would pass to begin with. And then lastly, this was something new this year that we added to this objective and priority was quantity. As we've seen, this whole issue of these 500-year events that happen every 3 years, the need for increased water mitigation efforts is needed now more than ever. We've seen it in western Iowa, we've seen it in the Cedar Valley and the Mississippi, but also in our small towns in more isolated events. And so what we want to do is have a strong partnership with the state on these water mitigation efforts. Next, I'll turn it over to Lucas.
Good afternoon. This is Lucas Binkin. Returning this year as a top priority, as it has been the last couple years, is full funding of the commercial and industrial property tax backfill. As you recall, legislation in 2013 rolled back the taxable value to 90% on commercial and industrial property. And as part of the state's buy-in, they agreed to make up for that future lost revenue to local governments. Currently, it's funded at $152 million total, $29 million to counties, and that's actually a frozen number now. It was unlimited the first couple of years, but then was frozen at the fiscal year 17 level. So we're continuing to ask for full funding and reminding legislators that this is making up for property tax dollars that were lost because of legislative action that they took. Counties are already absorbing the rollback on multi-residential, the exemption for telecommunications, the rollback on railroad, dealing with the new growth limitation on residential and ag. So we feel like we're bought in, and the state needs to keep their promise to fund the backfill. And we continue to point out that if those replacement dollars go away, counties will be left with one of two choices. Either raising property taxes if they have the capacity, or looking at cutting services in some way, or perhaps a combination of both. So those dollars are still vitally important because they make up for revenue that counties and other local governments would have received if not for the legislative action. And our fourth and final top priority is on weight limits on secondary roads. This was an objective last year and moved up to become a top priority this year. In 2018, legislation was passed that increased the weight limits for vehicles transporting either equipment or materials to construction sites, and basically said that they could use the maximum weight table that's used for that's used for primary roads on the secondary road system. The secondary road system is not designed the same way, does not have the same capacity as the primary road system. And so this is going to lead to not only faster deterioration of our secondary road system, but it's estimated by the county engineers that over 3,500 bridges will need to be posted with weight limit signs restricting traffic over them. And it's estimated that it would be between $3 and $4 million unfunded mandate to post those bridges, when a lot of those bridges and roads would actually never see these vehicles, but obviously you still have to comply with the federal roads manual as far as posting. So we're asking first to repeal that language that was included in the standings bill in 2018. And if that's not possible, then a compromise would be to say the primary road system weight limits only apply to the hard surface roads of the secondary road system and not the gravel system.
And next we'll move on to our legislative objectives.
The Certificate of the Treasurer is a new objective this year that came from the Treasurer's affiliate. Currently, when a subdivision plat is recorded, it has to include the Certificate of the Treasurer that says that that property is clear of property tax and special assessments, or that a special assessment is secured by a bond. Currently, there is no expiration on these certificates of the treasurer, and obviously the status of financial burden on a property can change over time. So we're simply asking that the certificates expire at the next annual certification of taxes, and then would need to be reissued at that time. Next is certificates of title. This also came from the county treasurers. Currently, when you are certifying, when you're registering, getting a title, releasing a security interest, or getting a replacement title on a vehicle, it has to be done in the county of residence. We're simply asking that this could be done across county lines, could be done in any county.
Next, it comes from our county auditors pertaining to the county seal. When legislation was passed last year related to elections on a lot of levels, one of the issue was that they brought up to take away the county auditor's signature off the ballot and replace it with the county seal. And so that has raised a whole lot of different issues. There's some counties that don't have a county seal. The language in the code in relation to the county seal pertains to the county treasurer. And with that, it calls for a raised seal. And so to have a raised seal on all the ballots in the state of Iowa would certainly increase the amount of the cost of elections throughout the state of Iowa. So what we're looking at is just getting that clarified, that if they do want a county seal, that it will be an unraised seal. Next comes from our sheriffs and deputies in terms of distracted driving. This has been a long time objective. Well, it's moved from objective to a policy statement, and now this moves from a policy statement back to an objective. And basically, What we're asking for, again, is for it to be that people will have to utilize hands-free communication devices while driving, and if they don't, then make that a primary offense. Next is on jail medical costs. This has been a long time objective, and it comes from the sheriffs and deputies. And so what there was legislation passed at the end of last year calling for ISAC, the Iowa Sheriffs and Deputies Association, and the Iowa Hospital Association to come together and to draft a report to provide recommendations and ultimately the process and the methods of payment and moving forward, and ultimately who is responsible and at what time for prisoner medical costs. And so we have a report that will be issued at the middle of this month. And basically it provides a series of recommendations to first and foremost seek private insurance first. That next to utilize the other methods of Medicaid, Medicare, and VA benefits, and then also provide some best practices in billing between the jail and the hospital, and then also allow some flexibility if there would have to be any Medicaid investigations. But the big thing that we've seen where it's worked well is where there's an agreement between the hospital and the jail, and basically to utilize Medicaid or the lowest negotiated rate between the jail and the hospital. Next this comes from the county auditors, is to return to allow for public measures such as bond issues on the general election ballot. We feel like this can be a great cost savings for county taxpayers if they'll be able to do that and combine that as well. Next comes from the county attorneys and the Iowa Sheriffs and Deputies Association on the issue of prisoner room and board. We're still, I believe they're in negotiations and coming up with some specific language to address this. The issue that we've seen is several judges have been waiving room and board based on the lack of ability to pay. Well, obviously this provides an increased burden on counties to provide room and board for these services. Next is on the Resource Enhancement and Protection, the REAP program. As I mentioned before, if IWIL is funded, it will fully fund REAP, but the major issue that we're running into is the sunset of the REAP program itself by 2021. And so we are asking for an extension of that sunset by at least 10 years to 2031, if not longer. And the next, coming from the Iowa Sheriffs and Deputies Association as well, is again an issue on super speeders. We seem to see this almost on a weekly basis of accidents caused by a high rate of speed. And so we're again asking for, as a result, to increase the vehicular homicide penalties for those exceeding the posted limit by 25 miles an hour or more, resulting of a death of another. And we'll start talking about the tools that we have. What you see before you in that screenshot is a way that you can track on the Iowa Legislature website various things in terms of legislation, to track committees, to look up your individual legislator and their email address and phone number. So this is a great tool that you can utilize during the session to track your legislation and advocate on behalf of our issues. And next, I will turn it over to Rach to talk about the updates that we've done to our existing tracking tool on our website.
Hi there, this is Rachel Bennett, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the ISAC Legislative Tracking Tool. As Jamie said, we've made some updates in the interim to offer some more benefits to our tracking tool and to make it a little more usable and user-friendly for our members. So I'll go ahead and run through that. In order to find the tracking tool, it will be in the same place under the Legislative tab at the very bottom. You'll see it circled there. We've also got it under the New and Noteworthy section currently, which is right below Tracking Tool in that image. If you want to go directly to it and bookmark it, the address is https://bills.iowacounties.org. Which will be the same when you open it up on our website as well, so you can bookmark it from there. One thing that you'll notice when you go to the tracking tool for the first time is that it is now members only, so you will need to log in. In order to log into the tracking tool, you'll go ahead and use the same login information that you use for ISAC events. If you can't remember that for any reason, you can go ahead and just reach out to any of us or to support@iowacounties.org, and we'll go ahead and send you your credentials to get in. You should be able to save it, and then from then on, you won't have to log in each time. So once you go into the actual tracking tool itself, you will see that it's laid out basically the same. So it looks more or less like a spreadsheet with columns and then items under for each bill. We wanted to keep it the same way because we did feel as though it functioned well and it was easy to understand. So one of the first things that I'll highlight is the Filter Records button in the upper right-hand corner. So instead of drop-downs on each column, you'll use this button to filter the records to get exactly what you want in terms of bills that are shown up there. So once you click on the button, it'll go ahead and pop up this little screen. And you'll see you can filter by any of those items that have checkboxes. So by affiliate, by our position that we file on a bill, and by multiples of those as well. At the bottom, you will click search, and then that will give you the results of your search. The next item that I'll highlight is the search records feature, which is just a search bar. This is kind of upgraded from the past. So as you search, as you type in, what you're typing will pop up below in the bills that are shown. This can be anywhere from what the bill's about, a title, a legislator, what sort of status we're on, anything like that. So it's pretty neat. So if he goes to the next slide, you'll see that here I just typed in property tax, and then all the bills that have anything to do with property tax, whether in their description or in their title, will pop up. You can see also that they're color-coded, and that is based on our position on the bill, how we're registered. So the fours are green, the against are reds, and then some of the others, undecided tracking, not applicable, are white. So that'll just be a quick way to search through them as well. Let's see. As I said, legislators, this is a quick way to search which legislators are on each bill as well. So just type in their name and that's who will pop up, which bills will pop up. So as Jamie mentioned earlier, the General Assembly website, which is a great tool, you can actually still get to that website directly from this tracking tool. If you just click on the blue bill number under the bill number column, that will take you directly to the full link of the bill from that site. So it still does have that ability to kind of go back and forth, which is nice. So the last item I will highlight is the bills details page. So as you'll see on the far right-hand side, there's a little eyeball icon that's blue. Some of the bills that we're following more closely, that we have more information on, priorities, objectives, and then obviously other bills that greatly affect our members, will have greater details under this section. So once you click on that little eyeball icon, this page will pop up. So as you can see, it will have a short description of the bill and then any comments as it's going along. This will be similar to some of the items that we put in our ISAC update. It might give more information about specifics on committees, things like that, just kind of updates as we're going along. We'll use these pages not only for you guys to stay up to date, but also for us to stay up to date as well. And then what's circled on this page is that little orange button, the comment button. So in the past, we have had a comment form that members have utilized quite a bit and provides us really good feedback during legislative session. So this comment button will just be tied to this specific bill. So once you click on it, a form will pop up that will offer you the chance to just give us direct feedback. It asks for some contact information as well as how it will affect your counting. Again, any feedback that you're able to provide to us helps quite a bit. And I believe that's all. If you have any questions for us at any time, you can email me or any of us, and we'll get back to you. And I think that's all.
All right. So before we move forward, we'd just like to open it up for those that have joined us to answer any questions that you might have about the legislative package or the tracking tool. So I'll open it up to all of you. All right. Well, you can always contact us at any time. We'll have our email and our contact information here at the very end. So the biggest thing, just to talk about, just getting involved. I mean, you guys know the drill in terms of, it's very important to contact your legislator and providing, not only our association's position on a piece of legislation, but also how it would affect not only your county, but also your district back home. And certainly you can do that for a variety of different ways, through phone calls, through email, through letters, events at the Capitol, and certain forums. The legislators go back to their districts. They usually leave every Thursday afternoon and then go back for forums on Friday and Saturdays. And so certainly we strongly encourage you to attend these forums and advocate on our behalf. And then also, too, feedback, certainly to us, is incredibly important. And so we provide an ISAC update that's emailed every Friday during the session. And also, too, to utilize the legislative comment form, not only in the update, but also in the tracking tool to provide feedback. And so we'll have a variety of events that will be coming up. January 8th, the spring conference registration will open. Then in terms of hotel registration, that's on opens up on the 14th of January. Then on the January 15th and the 16th, we'll have ISAC University. And remind me, Rach, where's that at?
ISAC University will be held at the Sheraton in West Des Moines. ISAC University is held every other year. It's more of a leadership conference, but everybody is invited to attend. It's a really good conference with high-quality speakers. Everybody's in the same room the whole time. Lots of great keynotes that you'll be able to see there.
And on January 30th, the annual statewide supervisors meeting will be at the Embassy Suites downtown. On February 29th through the March 4th, the NACO Legislative Conference will be held in Washington, D.C. And then on March 12th through the 13th is the ISAC Spring Conference. So, and that's at the Convention Center and the Hilton and in other hotels. So, with that, again, certainly contact Lucas and I anytime. Here's our contact information, and please reach out to us. And again, we can't thank you enough on what you do to advocate on behalf of ISAC. So, thank you very much, and have a Merry Christmas.